So we heard there the Russian view on relations between the EU and Russia. What is the European reaction?
Yes, well, there's been some initial reaction. We've had some here on Euronews that this really is classic Russian propaganda relayed in turn by Russian media, which turns facts and truth on its head. Medvedev says that Russia's a victim, that it wants to be a responsible international partner. He says that we didn't initiate, the EU's responsible for these hasty decisions, and we didn't initiate the sanctions. Well, the EU's counter-arguments to Medvedev would be that sanctions are in response to Russia's activities. Now, these activities have been alleged, but many in the West have put forward hard proof. And these come from NATO, from politicians, from security and intelligence agencies, and from investigative media. Let's just list some examples. Stirring up conflict in Ukraine, including direct military intervention. You could add to that the shooting down of the Malaysian airliner, annexing Crimea, troll farms and a disinformation campaign via social media, sowing up division in Europe in the West, interference in the US presidential election and perhaps in other elections in the West too, murder and attempted murder of civilians in other countries, including the Skripals. We heard his response there. Cyber attacks on various bodies, including the International Chemical Weapons Watchdog. As for the role in Syria, well, he says that they're helping to restore order to what was a modern secular state. But of course, Russia's accused of taking part in atrocities. Now, this is not me saying that. This is many bodies in the West that put forward evidence to back up those claims. That's their response when Medvedev says that Russia's a victim of anti-Russian hysteria.
And Medvedev also touched on the trade war in that interview. Do we have any idea of how that's actually really affecting the Russian economy?
Yes, well, this is interesting. He says that the sanctions have had an effect, and especially on the banking sector, it amounts to a declaration of a trade war. But he says that the sanctions, as you've heard, are counterproductive, that the trade with the EU accounts for almost half of Russian trade, and that's since halved since the sanctions came into effect. Undoubtedly, they have hit the Russian economy. He admits that, but it's also, in a way, stimulated local business to fill the gaps. The sanctions have targeted oligarchs abroad, but some commentators have said, well, some of that dirty money abroad has then been repatriated back into Russia, which again can help the Russian economy. Also, there's the argument that sanctions help unite the Russian people against a hostile West, again helped by pro-Kremlin media, and that it helps boost Russia on the world stage. Well, the West and the EU would say, well, yes, there are costs to all this. But if Medvedev wants international cooperation, that has to be rooted in values and not in hostile acts against Europe.